JRPGs have been around longer than we've had the World Wide Web. The very first Dragon Quest, the game that basically wrote the entire playbook for the genre, came out way back in 1986. And the wildest part is that whole blueprint was based on American PC games. Yeah, stuff like Ultima and Wizardry. The first Japanese developers they took those dense, complex ideas and figured out how to distill them into these incredible stories of adventure and friendship for a console audience. And in doing that, they created something entirely new. A genre that wasn't just about stats and dungeons, but about the journey. But you know what that long history means? It means there's a mountain of games out there. So, as always, I'm Daniel, and today, 20 amazing JRPGs you absolutely shouldn't miss.
All right, kicking things off at number 20 is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So the premise for this one is that the entire world is set on the frozen bodies of two colossal warring titans, the Bionis and the Mechonis. Years ago, they fought and killed each other, and now life has sprung up on their corpses. You play as the people of Bionis, the Homs, who are these, organic human-like people. And they're locked in this desperate war for survival against the Mechon, a race of unfeeling machines from the other titan. You play as Shulk, a young researcher who, during an attack on his colony, discovers he can wield this legendary sword called the Monado. And this sword, it doesn't just cut through Mechon armor, it gives him visions of the immediate future. The original game came out on the Wii, and even then, the sense of scale was just staggering. I mean, the core design philosophy here is if you can see a landmark in the distance, no matter how far away it looks, you can actually travel to it. And you're doing this on the leg of a dead god the size of a continent. It's insane. But the gameplay is where it really comes alive. The combat play is kind of like a single-player MMO almost. Your characters auto-attack, and you have a palette of special moves called arts that operate on cooldowns. So the strategy comes from positioning. You have to, physically move behind an enemy to use your backslash attack for extra damage, and managing all your different arts. But the real genius, the thing that ties it all together, is that future vision mechanic. It's not just a story thing. In the middle of a tough fight, the game will suddenly cut away and show you a vision of a devastating attack the enemy is about to unleash on one of your party members. You then have a small window of time, maybe 10 or 15 seconds, to react. Do you use one of Shulk's special Monado arts to shield them? Do you try to daze the enemy to interrupt the attack? It's a brilliant system that makes you feel proactive and heroic, not just reactive. And that's why this definitive edition on the Switch is so, definitive. They completely overhauled the graphics. It looks incredible now. They remastered the already god-tier soundtrack, and they added a whole new epilogue chapter called Future Connected. It's a huge, heartfelt adventure with a sense of scale that very few games ever managed to pull off. An amazing place to start.
Coming in at number 19 is Kunitsu-Gami, Path of the Goddess. The art style in Kunitsu-Gami is it's absolutely gorgeous. And I notice it's one of those games that doesn't get the attention it deserves. It has this vibrant, painterly aesthetic that's drenched in traditional Japanese folklore. If you ever played and loved Okami, this is going to feel spiritually familiar. So the premise is that the sacred mountain, Mount Kafuku, has been defiled. It's covered in this filth and these twisted monsters called the sea they're pouring out. You play as So, a man tasked with protecting Yoshiro, the maiden of the mountain, and your job is to guide her to these corrupted torii gates so she can perform a cleansing ritual to restore the land. Now, this is where the game gets really interesting. It's this a really weird and fascinating mix of genres. It's not just a straight-up action game, it has this very distinct day and night cycle that forms the core gameplay loop. During the day, it's almost like a real-time strategy and puzzle game. You explore the cleansed areas, rescuing villagers who then become your soldiers. Each villager has a specific role. You've got your melee fighters, your archers, the standard stuff. And you have to strategically place them along the path the sea they're going to take when night falls. But then when night comes, the whole thing explodes into this full-on action game. The sea is attack in waves, heading straight for Yoshiro, and you have to fight them directly alongside the villagers you placed. I mean, This is Capcom we're talking about, so the actual sword combat you're doing, it feels crisp. It's responsive, exactly what you would expect from the guys who make Devil May Cry and Monster Hunter. The real genius here is how the two halves feed into each other. Your planning and strategic choices during the day directly determine whether you survive the night. Did you put enough archers on that cliff to take out the flying enemies? Did you create a strong front line to protect the maiden? Yeah, it's a lot to juggle, but when a plan comes together and you see your little army just demolishing the Seethe while you're slashing away in the middle of it all, that is just, it's such a cool concept.
At number 18, we have Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch. Now, from the second you boot this game up, it doesn't just look like a Ghibli movie, it feels and sounds like one too. You play as a young boy named Oliver who lives this idyllic life in a perfect little 1950s style American town. And in the first 20 minutes of the game, his mother dies in a tragic accident trying to save him. It's devastating. But in his grief, his tears bring a small, stuffed fairy doll to life. This little guy named Drippy, High Lord of the Fairies. Drippy tells Oliver that he might be able to bring his mother back if he travels to Drippy's magical parallel world. So, Oliver steps through a portal and begins this huge adventure to become a wizard and save his mom. And the gameplay, it's like playing a fairy tale. The core of it revolves around collecting these creatures called familiars. It's kind of like Pokemon, but with its own unique flavor. You fight these monsters in the wild, and sometimes you'll get a chance to serenade them with your loot to tame them. Then you can name them, feed them treats to raise their stats, and eventually metamorphose them into new, more powerful forms. The combat is this interesting hybrid system. It happens in real time, but you're issuing commands to both Oliver and the three familiars you have active at any one time. You're running around the battlefield, telling your little mighty familiar to attack while you get ready to cast a fireball spell yourself. It can be a little chaotic, yeah, but it's just so charming. This game originally came out on the PS3, but thankfully it got a beautiful remaster for modern consoles a few years back. Honestly, it's the closest thing we've ever gotten to actually living inside a Studio Ghibli film for 60 hours. It's just overflowing with heart.
Coming in at number 17 is Bravely Default Flying Fairy. Okay, so this is a game that when it first came out on the Nintendo 3DS back in, 2011 or 2010? I don't know. It felt like a gift from the JRPG gods. It was made by Square Enix, and it looked and felt so much like a classic Final Fantasy game that for a second, you'd think you were playing some lost title from the 90s. I mean, it's widely seen as the spiritual successor to Final Fantasy: The Four Heroes of Light, and it absolutely lives up to that. The premise is pure and classic. The world of Luxendark is in peril because the four elemental crystals that keep it in balance are being consumed by darkness. You play as Tiz, a young shepherd who is the sole survivor of his village after it's swallowed by a great chasm. He meets Agnes Oblige, the Vestal of the Wind Crystal, who is on a pilgrimage to awaken the crystals and restore balance. Along the way, they team up with a charismatic, amnesiac womanizer named Ringabel and Idea Lee, and a disillusioned soldier from the enemy nation. But the reason this game is legendary, the thing that makes it a masterclass of game design, is the Brave and Default system. So, it's a turn-based combat system, right? But on any character's turn, you have a choice. You can default, which makes your character defend for that turn, taking less damage, and it also banks one action point for later. You can save up to 3 of these. Then, on a future turn, you can use the Brave command. This lets you spend those saved up points to take multiple actions in a single turn. So you can have your white mage, heal the party, cast a buff, and then heal again, all before the enemy even moves. But here's the genius part. You can also go into debt. You can use Brave on turn 1 with 0 points saved and have your character perform 4 actions right out of the gate. Maybe you just, unload with everything you have to wipe out a dangerous enemy instantly. The catch, that character then can't do anything for the next 3 turns while they recover their points. It turns every single battle, even against regular enemies, into this incredible risk-reward puzzle.
Do you go all out now and risk being a sitting duck, or do you play it safe and build up your turns? And you stack that on top of one of the best job systems in any RPG ever. You defeat bosses, you get their asterisk, and you unlock their job. We're talking Knight, Black Mage, Monk, Valkyrie, Performer. There are so many, and you can mix and match their passive abilities. It is an endless well of strategic depth. Now, I gotta be honest, the game has a pretty late game structure that was a sticking point for some people, but the core combat system is so revolutionary and so fundamentally fun that it more than makes up for it. It's a game that honors the classics while completely innovating on them.
At number 16 is Persona 5 Royal. So, as you most likely know, you're a high school student who's been falsely accused of a crime, and you're sent to live on probation for a year in Tokyo. While you're there, you and a group of other outcast kids discover you have the power to enter the metaverse, which is this cognitive world where the distorted desires of corrupt adults take physical form. So you form a group called the Phantom Thieves of Hearts, and your mission is to dive into these mental dungeons called palaces and steal the treasure at their core to force a change of heart in these awful people in the real world, as a scummy teacher, a plagiarizing artist, a mafia boss, you name it. The gameplay is brilliantly split into two distinct halves. By day, you are, for all intents and purposes, living a Japanese high school life. You go to class, you answer questions, you study for exams, but you also spend your afternoons and evenings building relationships. You can get a part-time job, you can hang out with your party members or go see a movie with your doctor. And this isn't just filler, this is the core of your progression. Every relationship you build, called a confidant, gives you new abilities that directly help you in the dungeons. So the better you are at being a person, the better you are at being a master thief. And then, by night, you dive into the palaces. The combat it's turn-based, but it's arguably the most stylish turn-based combat system ever created. It's all about exploiting enemy weaknesses. You hit an enemy with an element they're weak to, you knock them down, and you get a free extra turn. If you knock down all the enemies, you can trigger a devastating screen-filling all-out attack. It turns every fight into a puzzle of momentum and just pure, unadulterated style. Now, you have to talk about why it's Royal specifically. The original Persona 5 came out in 2017, and it was already a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. But Royal, which came out a few years later, takes that perfection and just makes it better in almost every single way. It adds two fantastic new characters, Kasumi and Maruki, who are woven into the main story, and it adds an entire new school semester. I'm talking a huge, emotionally resonant new story arc that takes place after the original game's ending. Plus, it's packed with quality of life improvements. They added a grappling hook to make exploring dungeons more fun, and they made it so your cat companion, Morgana, doesn't force you to go to sleep quite as often, which, thank God, if you've played the original, you know. It is a massive game. We're talking 120, 130 hours, but every single one of those hours is earned.
Okay, at number 15 is Metaphor ReFantasio. So this is from Studio Zero, which is an internal team at Atlas, led by the creative dream team behind Persona 3, 4, and 5. The premise is that the king of the United Kingdom of Uchronia has been assassinated, and a magical proclamation is cast over the land, a tournament to decide the next king. Anyone from any station in life can win if they can gain the support of the people. You play as a boy from a reviled outcast tribe called the Elda, who are seen as like heretical demons by most people. So along with your little fairy companion, Balika, you decide to enter this impossible race for the throne. And the gameplay is exactly the wild, brilliant fusion you'd expect. If you've played Persona, you'll feel the DNA right away. You have a calendar, a limited amount of time to travel across the vast kingdom in your massive armored vehicle, the Gauntlet Runner. You have to choose how to spend your days.
Do you push forward to the next town, or do you spend time in the current city helping people and building your support? The core of your power comes from archetypes. They're essentially this world's version of personas. By forming bonds with your followers and confronting their anxieties, you awaken these heroic forms within yourself, which act as your jobs. We're talking knight, mage, healer, thief. There's a ton of them, and you can switch between them on the fly. But the most revolutionary thing here, the thing that I think is going to change things, is the combat system. It's this seamless hybrid. When you see enemies in the world, you can just run up and attack them in real time. For weaker mobs, you just slash them and they're gone in 2 seconds. It completely eliminates the tedium of old-school random battles. But for tougher enemies, or anytime you want to get strategic, you can freeze time and enter a full turn-based command battle. It gives you the speed and fluidity of an action game and the deep strategic satisfaction of a traditional JRPG. It's the best of both worlds. This is a game about a journey, not just in terms of traveling, but in changing the hearts and minds of a whole kingdom that's been taught to hate you. It's a massive, deeply ambitious fantasy RPG that feels both comfortingly familiar and shockingly new at the same time. An absolute must-play.
Sliding into number 14 is Valkyria Chronicles 4. Now, this is a tactical RPG, but it's probably not like anything you've played before. This isn't Final Fantasy Tactics, this isn't Fire Emblem. This is something completely unique. The game is from Sega, and it's set in this fictional 1930s era continent called Europa, which is basically in the middle of its own World War II. You've got the Atlantic Federation against the Eastern Imperial Alliance. The premise is you take command of Squad E of the Federation Army. You're Commander Claude Wallace, and you are leading your childhood friends on this massive, desperate, all-or-nothing offensive called Operation Northern Cross. The goal is to push straight through the Arctic and capture the Imperial capital to try and end the war. It's a very grounded, often somber story about soldiers. The gameplay uses this system called the Blitz system, Battle of Live Tactical Zones, and it works like this. You start each turn in command mode, which is this top-down map of the battlefield. It looks like a military briefing map. From here, you spend command points to select one of your soldiers. But the second you select a unit, the camera drops down from the sky and puts you right behind that character's shoulder in full 3D. It becomes a third-person shooter. You have to physically run your character across the field, take cover behind sandbags, line up your shot, and fire. Every soldier has a limited amount of action points, basically their movement fuel, so you can't just run forever. The strategy comes from using your different unit classes. You've got your long-range scouts, your heavy-hitting shock troopers, your anti-tank lancers, and this game adds the grenadier class, which can lob mortars over cover. It's this incredible puzzle of using the right tool for the right job. Maybe you use a scout to run ahead and spot a hidden enemy, then activate a sniper to take them out from across the map. It's just so satisfying when a plan works. And the whole thing is presented in this stunning canvas engine art style. It literally looks like a watercolor painting come to life. The screen has these pencil sketch borders, and sound effects appear as text on the screen. It's beautiful. This game was a huge deal for fans because it was a massive return to form for the series, back to what made the first game on the PS3 so beloved. In fact, the story of this game takes place at the exact same time as the first game, just on a different front of the war. That makes it the absolute perfect place to jump into the series. You don't need to know anything going in. It's a masterpiece of strategy and style.
At number 13, we've got Scarlet Nexus. So this is a game from Bandai Namco, and it's this genre they call it brain punk. It's set in this futuristic world where humanity has developed psionic powers, which has completely changed society, but at the same time, these bizarre, almost surreal creatures called the Others have started descending from the sky to, feed on human brains. Yeah, they're super weird. They look like a bouquet of flowers mixed with mannequin legs and monster parts. The art design is just wild. You play as a new recruit in the OSF, the Other Suppression Force, which is this elite team of psychics who are the only ones who can fight these things. Right at the start, you have to choose between two characters, Yobito, who is this cheerful, good-hearted kid with a sword, or Kasane, a more cool-headed and prodigal soldier who uses a flurry of floating knives. And their stories are intertwined, but they also experience completely different events, so you get two unique perspectives on the central mystery. But the real star here, the absolute main event, is the combat. It's a fast-paced action RPG, but the twist is your psychokinesis. So you're in the middle of a combo, slashing away with your weapon, and then with the pull of a trigger, you mentally rip a parked car out of the ground and just hurl it at an enemy, and it explodes. And the two systems feed into each other. You use your weapon attacks to build up your psychic energy, then you use your psychic attacks to break an enemy's crush gauge, leaving them open for a huge finishing move. It's this incredible, satisfying loop. But then it goes even deeper. You have a whole squad fighting with you, and you can tap into their powers using the SAS system. So in the middle of a fight, you can borrow your friend's pyrokinesis to set your sword on fire. Or you can use another's sclerokinesis to turn your body into an invulnerable shield for a few seconds. Need to see an invisible enemy? Borrow clairvoyance. It makes you feel like this insanely powerful psychic superhero. This was made by a lot of the same people who worked on the Tales series, and you can feel that DNA in the polished action and the great character interactions. It's just one of the most slick and uniquely satisfying action combat systems I've played in a JRPG in a long, long time. An absolute blast.
At number 12 is Chrono Trigger. Look, if you talk to anyone who grew up with the Super Nintendo and you ask them to name one of the best games ever made, there is a very good chance they will say Chrono Trigger. And for good reason. This game, released back in 1995, wasn't just another JRPG. It was made by what can only be described as the JRPG Dream Team. You had the creator of Final Fantasy, you also had the creator of Dragon Quest, and you had the legendary artist behind Dragon Ball doing all the character designs. It was an unprecedented collaboration. The premise starts small. You're Chrono, a kid going to the Millennial Fair in his hometown. You bump into a girl named Marl, you check out your friend Luca's new teleportation machine, and, well, an accident happens, and Marl gets sucked into a portal that throws her 400 years into the past. In your attempt to rescue her, you kick off an adventure that spirals into a desperate quest across the entire span of history, from prehistoric times all the way to a desolate, apocalyptic future. Your goal? To stop a world-ending parasite named Lavos. Yeah, a giant, parasitic alien hedgehog from space. First off, no random battles. You could see the enemies right there on the map. You could try to sneak past them if you wanted. That alone was a huge deal back then, and the combat was this beautiful evolution of the active time battle system from Final Fantasy. But the real magic was the tech system. Each character had their own special moves, but the genius part was that they could combine them. You could have Chrono use his Cyclone Spin attack, at the same time Frog uses his Slurp Cut, and they'd combine to create a new, more powerful attack called X-Strike. With a full party of 3, you could even unleash triple techs. It made you constantly experiment with your party lineup just to see all the insane combos you could pull off. And the time travel wasn't just a story gimmick. Actions you took in one era would have visible consequences in another. You could, leave a sealed chest in 600 AD, then travel to 1000 AD to the exact same spot and open it to get a powered-up version of the treasure. It's just so clever. This is also the game that basically perfected New Game Plus. After you beat it, you could start over with all your levels and gear, which lets you challenge the final boss at different points in the story to unlock, I think it's over a dozen different endings. The replayability was insane. It's been ported to a bunch of different platforms since the SNES, however you want to pronounce it, the PlayStation, the Nintendo DS, and now there's a good version on Steam. Honestly, it's one of those games that's just perfect. The pacing is perfect. The story is incredible. The music is unforgettable. It's as close to a flawless JRPG as you will ever get.
Coming in hot at number 11 is Final Fantasy VII Remake. You play as Cloud Strife, a former elite soldier turned mercenary with a very cloudy past. You take a job with an eco-terrorist group called Avalanche. Their mission? To blow up a Mako reactor. Mako is the literal lifeblood of the planet, and the hyper-capitalist Shinra Electric Power Company is draining it dry to power the massive city of Midgar. Now here's the first big and kind of controversial thing you gotta know. This game is only the Midgar section of the original. That's it. What was maybe a 6 or 7 hour opening act in the 97 game has been expanded into its own full-fat 40-hour epic. And honestly, it was a brilliant move, because it lets the story and the gameplay breathe. They completely reinvented it. At first glance, it looks like a pure action RPG like Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy 15. You're controlling Cloud directly, dodging, blocking, hitting combos in real time. But you have an ATB gauge, just like the old days. As you land hits, this gauge fills up. Once you have a chunk charged, you can enter tactical mode, where everything slows to a crawl, almost stopping time. From this menu, you spend your ATB charges to use your classic abilities, cast spells like Fire and Cure, or use items. It's a genius hybrid system. It gives you the cinematic, visceral thrill of an action game, but it keeps the deep strategic heart of a command-based RPG. You can't just button mash. You have to manage your ATB, you have to switch between your party members on the fly to control them directly, and you have to exploit enemy weaknesses to build up their pressured gauge until you stagger them, leaving them completely helpless for a massive damage phase. And that expanded story, it's not just filler. It means characters like Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, who were, kind of side notes in the original, are now fully developed characters with their own motivations, personalities, and dedicated story chapters. You genuinely grow to love them. It makes the world feel so much more grounded and real. And without getting into major spoilers, this isn't a straight one-to-one retelling. There are changes, new mysteries. These strange, ghost-like entities called Whispers appear, trying to ensure that events play out exactly as they're supposed to. It creates this incredible meta-narrative about fate and destiny, and it makes even seasoned veterans who know the original game by heart sit on the edge of their seats.
Moving on to number 10, we have Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma. Now, this is a series that I have a huge soft spot for. If you've never played one, the basic pitch is what happens if you take a classic JRPG and smash it headfirst into a farming simulator like Story of Seasons. Yeah, it's that one more day kind of game that can just completely consume you. So the premise for this new one is that you wake up with, you guessed it, amnesia. It's a series staple, and you find yourself in the land of Azuma. And this setting is the big new thing here. Azuma is this beautiful region heavily inspired by feudal Japan. So instead of a Western fantasy kingdom, you're surrounded by cherry blossom trees, bamboo forests, and traditional Japanese architecture. The local deity has fallen into a slumber, and as a result, the land's spiritual balance is out of whack, causing monsters to become aggressive. As an earthmate, someone with a special connection to the land, it falls to you to restore order. You're living a double life. By day, you're a farmer. You're clearing your field, tilling the soil, planting seeds, and watering your crops. And with the new setting, you're growing stuff like, rice and paddies, daikon radishes, soybeans. It's a really cool thematic change. But then you can grab your sword, or your spear, or your dual blades, there's a ton of weapon types, and head out into the dungeons. The combat is real-time action, so you're dodging, slashing, and using special rune abilities to take down monsters. The goal is to delve into these corrupted shrines and temples to find and awaken the slumbering guardians of the title. And this is Rune Factory, so you don't just kill monsters, you can tame them. You can brush a Woolly, one of the series' fluffy sheep mascots, until it loves you, and then it'll live on your farm and produce wool for you. Or you can take a powerful wolf monster into a dungeon with you to fight by your side. And wrapped around all of that is the life sim stuff. The town is filled with lovable, quirky characters, and you spend your time talking to them, giving them gifts, and building relationships. You participate in town festivals like a New Year's festival or a fishing contest, and of course, you can eventually find someone to woo, get married to, and start a family with. What makes Guardians of Azuma so special is that new setting. It's not just a coat of paint, it informs the crops you grow, the festivals you celebrate, the monsters you fight. It's just such a breath of fresh air for an already fantastic series. It's the perfect blend of cozy farming and exciting adventure.
For number 9, we've got Fire Emblem Three Houses. Now, Fire Emblem has been around for decades, but this game was different. Byleth, a stoic mercenary who, through a strange turn of events, ends up becoming a professor at the Garreg Monastery. And this isn't just some monastery, it's the most prestigious military academy on the entire continent of Fodlan. The continent itself is divided between 3 rival nations, and this academy is where all their future leaders and nobles are trained. And right at the beginning, you have to make the single most important choice in the entire game. Which of the 3 student houses will you lead? You've got the Black Eagles, led by the ambitious Princess Edelgard. You have the Blue Lions, led by the earnest and troubled Prince Dimitri. And you have the Golden Deer, led by the cunning and charming Claude. And this one choice, it doesn't just give you a different set of students, it gives you a completely different story and a unique perspective on the massive conflict that's about to engulf the land. The gameplay is brilliantly divided into 2 halves. The first half is the school phase. It's almost like a JRPG version of Hogwarts. You spend your weeks teaching your chosen students, training them in swords, magic, flying, whatever you want their specialty to be. And in your free time, you wander the monastery, you go fishing, you do quests, you share meals with your students, and yes, I'm serious, you can invite them for tea parties to build your bond. It's incredibly charming, and it's all designed to make you care deeply about these kids. Then you have the battles. This is your classic Fire Emblem, a top-down, grid-based tactical RPG where positioning and strategy are everything. And of course, you have the option for classic permadeath, where if a character falls in battle, they're gone, for good. This game also adds a new system called battalions, where you assign a squad of troops to each character. These battalions let you use powerful gambit attacks that can rattle entire groups of enemies. It's a fantastic new layer of strategy. But the real genius, the thing that makes this game a masterpiece, is the time skip. Halfway through the game, everything goes sideways. War breaks out, and the story jumps forward 5 years. And suddenly, you're leading your students, who are now adults, in a full-scale war. And the enemies you're fighting on the battlefield, they're the students from the other houses, the same kids you shared meals with and helped with their studies in the first half of the game. You are now forced to fight and potentially kill. It is absolutely devastating. It turns every single battle into this gut-wrenching emotional dilemma. Because you spent 40 hours getting to know these characters, the stakes feel astronomically high. It's a masterpiece of storytelling through game mechanics, and with 3 completely unique story paths, the replayability is just off the charts, an absolute must-play.
All right, at number 8, we have Star Ocean: The Second Story R. So the original game came out on the PlayStation 1 back in '98, and it was this incredibly ambitious, almost legendary cult classic from the developer Tri-Ace. They're known for their fast-paced, action-oriented combat, and this was them at the top of their game. But let's be honest, the original had some quirks, including some very memorable voice acting. The premise is this fantastic science meets sorcery setup. Right at the beginning, you choose between 2 protagonists. You can play as Claude, a young officer in the Earth Federation who gets accidentally teleported to an underdeveloped planet during a mission, or you can play as Rena, a young girl living on that same fantasy planet who has mysterious healing powers. She finds Claude and believes he's the legendary hero from her prophecies, meant to save their world from a new evil. Your choice affects who you can recruit and the events you see, giving it instant replayability. But the gameplay is where Star Ocean has always shined, and this remake it elevates it to a whole new level. The combat is real-time. It's not turn-based. You run around a 3D arena, hacking away at enemies and unleashing special moves called killer moves. But the big new thing for the R version is the break system. As you hit enemies, you build up this stagger gauge. When it fills, the enemy's broken, they're stunned, and they take a ton of extra damage. It adds this incredibly satisfying strategic layer. Do you focus fire on one tough enemy to break them and get them out of the fight quickly? It feels amazing. And then you have all the other classic systems polished to a mere shine. The private action system lets you split up your party when you enter towns to trigger hundreds of little character scenes, which builds relationships and affects the ending. And the item creation? Oh my god, the item creation. You can completely break the game with it if you know what you're doing. Crafting a sword that's more powerful than anything you're supposed to have for like the next 20 hours. It's fantastic. What makes this remake so special, though, is the presentation. They used this gorgeous 2.5D art style, placing the original pixel art characters into these beautiful, fully rendered 3D environments. It looks absolutely stunning in motion. The entire soundtrack was reorchestrated by the legendary original composer. They got the original voice actors back. It's a project that was clearly made with so much love and respect for the source material. It is without a doubt the definitive way to play one of the best action JRPGs ever made.
Yep, at number 7, we have Dragon Quest XI: Echoes of an Elusive Age. Look, this is pure, uncut, traditional JRPG goodness from the granddaddy of the genre himself. And of course, you've got that iconic, unmistakable art from the late great Akira Toriyama. Everything from the enemies to the character designs, it feels like coming home. It's a playable fairy tale that's just brimming with charm. You play as the reincarnation of the Luminary, a legendary hero of light. Sounds great, right? Well, when you go to the kingdom of Heliodor to reveal this to the king, he doesn't throw a parade for you. No, he brands you the Darkspawn, a harbinger of doom, and tosses you into the dungeons. So, your epic quest to save the world begins with you as a wanted fugitive on the run with a charming blue-haired thief named Eric. The gameplay it's deliberately classic, and I love it for that. It is pure turn-based combat polished to an absolute mirror shine. It's simple to understand, but has a ton of strategic depth. The modern twist here is the PEP system, where your characters will randomly get powered up in battle, and if you get multiple party members pepped up at the same time, you can unleash these awesome cinematic team attacks. But the real soul of Dragon Quest is just exploring the world. It's a massive, vibrant adventure, and every single town you visit has this incredible personality, largely thanks to a truly brilliant localization that gives different regions their own distinct real-world accents. It just makes the world feel so alive. And it's all wrapped in this overwhelmingly positive and heroic feeling. It's a game that just makes you feel good to play. Now, you absolutely have to play the S version, Dragon Quest XI S: Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. The original release was fantastic, but the S version is it's essential. The single biggest upgrade is you can switch from the synthesized soundtrack to a fully orchestrated one, and oh my god, the difference is night and day. It's glorious. But the craziest feature? At any church, you can choose to switch the entire game into a 2D, 16-bit SNES-style retro mode. It's not a gimmick, it's the full game remade in a classic style. It's one of the coolest features I've ever seen in a JRPG. On top of that, they added new story scenarios that flesh out your party members. It's a massive, heartwarming adventure that doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, it perfects it. If you have ever been even remotely curious about the Dragon Quest series, this is without a single doubt the place to start.
Next up at number 6 is Yakuza Like a Dragon. Okay, so for years, for decades, the Yakuza series, or Like a Dragon as it's known now, was this real-time brawler. It was about Kazuma Kiryu, the legendary dragon of Dojima, just
beating the absolute tar out of people with his fists and whatever bicycles were lying around. But for this game, the 7th main entry, the developers did the unthinkable. They threw all that out and turned it into a full-blown turn-based JRPG. And everyone thought they were crazy. And they did it by introducing a new hero, a completely different kind of hero. This is the story of Ichiban Kasuga. And Ichiban, he is not the cool, stoic Kiryu. He's this loud, goofy, fiercely loyal, and unbelievably optimistic guy with a heart of pure gold. He's also a massive, massive fan of the Dragon Quest series, and that's important. The premise is that Ichiban, a low-level grunt in a small Yakuza family, takes the fall for a crime he didn't commit to protect his patriarch. He spends 18 years in prison. When he finally gets out, he goes to find the man he sacrificed everything for, who probably shoots him and leaves him for dead in a dumpster. He wakes up homeless, friendless, and betrayed in the city of Yokohama, and his quest is simply to find out why. Now, the absolute genius of it is how they justify the turn-based combat. Because Ichiban is such a huge nerd who has played so much Dragon Quest, his overactive imagination literally transforms every street fight into a fantastical JRPG battle. The thugs on the street don't just look like thugs to him, they transform into these bizarre monsters. And the JRPG mechanics are all filtered through this modern-day lens. There's a job system, but you don't go to a guild to change jobs, you go to Hello Work, the real-world Japanese employment agency. And the jobs are things like a chef, a breaker who's a break dancer, or an idol who buffs the party by singing. It's ridiculous and brilliant. The summons? You don't summon Bahamut, you pull out your phone and call Poundmates, which is a service where you can pay money to have a bizarre ally show up. You can call, and I am not making this up, a giant man in a diaper, or a crawfish that pinches an enemy, or a flock of pigeons to attack someone. It's just wild. But underneath all that is a classic Yakuza story. It's a deeply emotional, incredibly well-written crime drama about friendship and finding your place when you've hit rock bottom. And the city is still packed with the insane side quests and mini-games the series is known for, from kart racing to running a business empire. It's the perfect entry point for newcomers, and it's a testament to how taking a massive creative risk can lead to one of the most heartfelt and hilarious JRPGs of the modern era. At number 5 is Chained Echoes. Now, when you look at this game, the beautiful pixel art, the intricate combat systems, the sprawling story, you'd think it was made by a veteran team at a big studio. But it wasn't. It was almost entirely made by one person. A German developer named Matthias Linde spent about 7 years creating this absolute masterpiece, and it feels like a lost treasure from the golden age of the SNES. The premise is that you're on the continent of Volandes, which has been locked in this brutal generation-spanning war between 3 kingdoms. You play as a whole ensemble cast of characters, but it starts with Glenn and Killian, a couple of mercenaries who get caught up in a plot that leads to the detonation of a weapon of mass destruction. The blast kills thousands and forces a shaky peace across the land. The game picks up from there, with your party trying to navigate this new world and stop the forces that are trying to plunge it back into war. But the gameplay is where this game it completely redefines what a retro-style JRPG can be. The combat is turn-based, but the core of it is the overdrive system. It's this bar at the top of the screen. As you use abilities, a marker moves along the bar. The goal is to keep that marker inside a green sweet spot. When you're in the green overdrive zone, all your skills cost less and you do more damage. But if you go too far, you overheat, which makes you take more damage. So every single turn is this fascinating little puzzle. You can't just spam your strongest attacks. You have to use certain types of skills to move the bar left and others to move it right. It's a constant balancing act that it's so incredibly engaging. And then there's the other genius thing. There is no grinding, like at all. 0 random battles. You see every enemy on the map, and you don't get experience points for fighting them. Instead, you get grimoire shards after key boss fights and story moments, and you use those to learn new skills. It is so respectful of your time. Every single fight matters because it drains your resources, but you're never just running in circles for hours to gain one level. And then, just when you think you've seen it all, you get giant, customizable mechs called Skyarmors. The game just opens up into this whole new dimension of exploration and combat with its own dedicated mech battles that also use the overdrive system. It feels so much like Xenogears in the best possible way. This game isn't just a love letter to the classics like Chrono Trigger, it actively innovates on them, trimming the fat and adding its own brilliant ideas. For a game made by one guy to be this ambitious, this polished, and this damn good, it's just incredible. A modern masterpiece.
At number 4 is Triangle Strategy. So this is another one from that team at Square Enix that's been putting out these gorgeous HD 2D games like Octopath Traveler. And this one is their love letter to the classics of the genre. I'm talking Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre. This is a serious, dense, political tactical RPG for people who love to get lost in a good story. The premise is you're in the land of Norzelia, it's on a knife's edge. There are 3 nations that have just come out of this brutal conflict called the Salt Iron War, fighting over, the continent's only sources of salt and iron. You play as Serenoa Wolfort, the young heir to a noble house that controls a key trading town, and you're just trying to navigate these incredibly tense alliances. And then, as you might expect, everything explodes back into open war, and you are thrust right into the middle of it. The gameplay is pure, classic, grid-based tactical bliss. Positioning is everything. Getting your archer on the high ground to increase their range, stabbing an enemy in the back for a guaranteed critical hit, creating pincer formations for follow-up attacks, all that good stuff. But where it gets really clever is with the elemental interactions. You can have your mage cast a fire spell on a patch of dry grass to create a flaming barrier, or you can melt a patch of ice to create a puddle, and then have another mage cast a lightning spell into it to electrocute everyone standing there. It makes you look at the battlefield itself as a weapon. But the thing that elevates this game to a whole other level, the thing that makes it truly special, is the scales of conviction. This is not a game where you just pick your story path from a menu. For major game-altering decisions, like whether to surrender a town or harbor a fugitive prince, your core party members hold a vote, and they might not agree with you. Your job is to go into an exploration phase, talk to townspeople, uncover clues and information, and then use that knowledge as dialogue options to try and persuade your allies to see things your way. It is a brilliant system. You have to literally argue for your convictions, and if you can't make a compelling case, your party will vote against you, and the story will go down a path you didn't want. And the choices are hard. There are no easy good guy options here. It's often choosing between what's pragmatic and what's moral. It's a game that asks, what are you willing to sacrifice for victory? It's a slow burn, for sure. The story is dense, there's a lot of dialogue, but it is so rewarding. All right, at number 3 is Sea of Stars. Now, this is technically a prequel set in the same universe as The Messenger, thousands of years before. The premise is pure classic heroism. You play as 2 childhood friends, Valere and Zale. They are solstice warriors born on the winter and summer solstices, and they're the only ones who can combine their sun and moon magic to perform eclipse magic. And their destiny, their entire reason for being, is to fight the monstrous creations of an evil alchemist known as the Fleshmancer. At first glance, it's a 16-bit RPG, but the traversal is so modern. You're not just walking on a map, you're climbing cliffs, vaulting over ledges, swimming, balancing on tightropes. It feels more like an adventure game, and it makes exploring the world just so much more engaging. And the combat, it's turn-based, and there are no random encounters. You see every enemy, but it is not passive. It's built around timed hits, just like Super Mario RPG. You press the button right as an attack lands to do extra damage, or right before an enemy hit connects to reduce the damage you take. It keeps you focused on every single action.
But you've also got the locks system. When an enemy is about to unleash a powerful spell, you'll see a series of icons appear over their head, maybe a sword icon, a sun icon, and another sword icon. These are the locks. You have a limited number of turns to hit that enemy with those specific damage types. So you'd have to use a sword attack, then Valera's moon magic, then another sword attack. If you break all the locks in time, you cancel their spell completely. It turns every major fight into this frantic, brilliant little puzzle. And it's all fueled by this live mana system where your regular attacks make little mana orbs pop off the enemy, which you can then absorb to power your special skills. It creates this perfect, satisfying flow. And of course, just like its biggest inspiration, you have incredible, flashy, dual character combo attacks. This game won Best Independent Game at the 2023 Game Awards for a reason. And as a final beautiful touch, the legendary composer of Chrono Trigger. It's a game made with so much palpable love and respect for the classics, but it has enough of its own brilliant ideas to stand on its own as a genuine, undeniable masterpiece.
At number 2 is Octopath Traveler 2. Now look, the first Octopath Traveler was great. It was this beautiful proof of concept for that incredible HD 2D art style, that perfect blend of 16-bit sprites and modern 3D environments. But it kind of had a problem. The 8 characters you played as, their stories never really connected. It felt like you were playing 8 separate solo adventures in the same world. So the sequel follows the same basic structure. It's set in a new land called Celestia, and you choose one of 8 new protagonists to start with. A warrior, a dancer, a scholar, a cleric, you know the drill. Each has their own deeply personal story and motivation. But this time, their stories actually cross over. There are dedicated crossed paths chapters, where 2 of the travelers team up for a side story that's completely separate from their main quests. It makes the world feel so much more cohesive and makes your party feel like an actual party of adventurers. And the world itself is so much more dynamic thanks to the new day-night cycle. With the press of a button, you can instantly switch from day to night. The music changes, different people come out, and new quests appear. And this gives every character 2 different path actions to interact with the world. So the warrior Oswald, during the day, he can scrutinize people to get information, but at night, he just straight up mugs them for their items. It doubles the ways you can interact with the world and solve puzzles. The combat is built on that same genius break and boost system from the first game. Every enemy has a shield with a number on it, and specific weapon or elemental weaknesses. Your job is to hit those weaknesses to break the enemy, stunning them and making them take way more damage. At the same time, you're building up boost points every turn. You can then spend those points to boost a regular attack into a multi-hit combo or power up a spell to devastating effect. It's this beautiful strategic puzzle in every single fight. But then they added another layer on top of it called latent powers. It's basically a limit break that charges up as you take damage or break foes. When it's full, you can unleash a unique, game-changing ability. The Thief Throne can use hers to act twice in one turn. The Hunter Ochette can unleash powerful, monstrous skills. It adds this incredible new tactical dimension to the fights.
And finally, at number 1, we have Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. Look, this is a game that is the definition of not for everyone. This isn't about the power of friendship, this is about the power of a good strategy and a whole lot of demons. You're a normal Tokyo high school student who gets caught up in a cataclysm. You black out and you wake up in this sprawling, sand-swept desert that used to be Tokyo, a wasteland now called Dot. And here, a war between the legions of heaven and the hordes of hell has been raging for years over the empty throne of God. Before you're killed, you're saved by a proto-fiend named Aogami, and you fuse with him to become a Nahobino, a forbidden being of immense power, neither human nor demon. The gameplay is built on 2 pillars. It uses the legendary press turn system. It's turn-based, but if you exploit an enemy's weakness, say hitting them with an ice spell when they're weak to ice, you get a free extra action for that turn. You can stack these up and get a whole flurry of attacks in, but, and this is the crucial part, the enemies play by the exact same rules. If you get hit with your weakness, they get an extra turn. If you use a spell that an enemy nullifies, you lose your turns. It's a high-stakes poker game in every single battle, and a single mistake, even against basic enemies, can lead to a full party wipe. It's brutal, but it's always fair. The second pillar, and the absolute soul of SMT, is demon negotiation and fusion. You don't just kill the demons you fight, you can talk to them. You pause the battle to negotiate. You have to answer their weird questions, give them money, give them your health. You might try to flatter a little pixie, or try to act tough for a giant ogre. If you succeed, they join your party. And then you take those demons you've recruited and you fuse them together in this dark, twisted version of Pokemon breeding to create new, more powerful demons, passing down skills and customizing your perfect team. The loop of fighting, negotiating, and fusing is one of the most addictive things in all of gaming. The original SMT5 on the Switch was already a masterpiece of gameplay. But if we're being honest, the story was maybe a little light for some people. Vengeance completely changes that. It's the definitive version, a total overhaul. It adds an entirely new second story path called the Canon of Vengeance. It introduces a new group of demons, the Tadaishtu, and a fantastic new character, Yoko Hiromine, and tells a completely different story that branches off early. It's not just an epilogue, it's a whole new 80-hour game woven into the original. On top of that, it's packed with quality of life improvements. You can save anywhere now, thank God. They've rebalanced skills, added new areas, new demons, new music. It's a massive, dark, and incredibly deep adventure that respects your intelligence like few other games do. It demands a lot from you, but the satisfaction you get from overcoming its challenges is unmatched.
Okay, as an honorable mention, we've got The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3. The Trails series is famous for its massive, continuous, overarching story. Playing this game first would be like starting The Lord of the Rings with The Return of the King. This is the 8th game in the overall story arc, and it heavily relies on your knowledge of not just the first 2 Cold Steel games, but also the events of the Trails in the Sky and Trails from Zero Azure games. You're once again playing as Rean Schwarzer, the hero of the first 2 games, but he's not a student anymore. He's graduated and is now an instructor at a new branch campus of the Thor's Military Academy. So you take command of a brand new Class 7, a fresh batch of misfit students, and you guide them in their field studies across the increasingly tense Erebonian Empire. And the gameplay is the Trails combat system, which is already one of the best in the genre, polished to an absurd degree. It's turn-based, but positioning on the battlefield matters. The real depth comes from the orbment system, where you customize each character's magic and stats by setting different quartz. And this game adds Brave Orders. These are party-wide buffs you can activate on your turn that don't consume a character's action. So you can, boost your party's attack for 3 turns, or drastically reduce the casting time for magic. It adds another incredible layer to what is already a deep strategic system. And of course you have the social sim aspect. Just like in the old games, you're building bonds with your students and colleagues, and it has that same kind of satisfying loop you see in games like Persona or Three Houses. But the real magic here, the thing that makes this game so special, is the world building. Because you've spent hundreds of hours in this world, when a character from a previous game shows up, it's not just a cameo, it's a reunion. When they reference an event from 5 games ago, you remember it. The sheer scale and ambition of the storytelling in this series is it's completely unparalleled in gaming. So while it's absolutely not for newcomers, I have to acknowledge it. If you're willing to take that plunge and invest the time in this series from the beginning, there is nothing else like it. The Trail series is one of the greatest JRPG achievements of all time, and this game is a spectacular high point. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and also turn on the notification. Lastly, don't forget to drink water and get some sun. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.